Let's paint a stunning hibiscus and sunny leafy background in watercolour. Hibiscus, they're just so exotic, don't you think? And yet they look difficult, but they can be a surprisingly fun watercolour project. My name's Annika, and today I'll show you how we can simplify this gorgeous flower and create a beautiful sunny leafy background with one of my favourite techniques, and that is negative painting. I'm using Artistico Fabriano 100% cotton paper along with Daniel Smith watercolours. We've got quinacridone coral, which is a warm red, and permanent alizarin, a cool red. I've got the French ultramarine blue on the side just in case we need it, and some sap green, which is a warm green, and some really dark, beautiful jadeite genuine, which is a cool green. And finally, some nickel azo yellow, also by Daniel Smith. Great for sunshine. And we're using a 1/2 inch Rosemary & Co. dagger. And this is a 1/4 inch Princeton dagger striper. Two really good brushes, and I'm going to show you some really good uses for them. If you recall, when we drew our frangipani, we did it with 5 loops. 1 loop, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The hibiscus isn't much different. It also has 5 petals and they also overlap. So therefore, this one overlaps that one, overlaps. That means we get rid of this line in here because it overlaps, and we get rid of these lines over here. Now all these petals are overlapping. That one has to be in there. Yes, there you go. That's the line I had to get rid of, look. Okay, so now the only thing that's different is that the petals aren't so egg-shaped, but rather they're bigger, and sometimes they appear to be a bit squarish depending on the way they fall and fold. So now if we start out at the middle and take our petal out and just stop there because that's going to be another leading line. It's best to go in one direction, so we're going to go around this way. And you know, they're a little bit wrinkly, they can come down. And then starting at the back again, this is now again a leading edge, so it goes in, starting from underneath and coming out. Is that one, and for the final one, coming out and a little bit turned up. And there's our hibiscus with overlapping wiggly petals. And now we need our staminal column. And we can do it like that. And it'll have 5 stigmas at the end. And it'll have its anthers and stamens here. Also the direction, so they're all coming around like this, like a windmill, and we need the creases and folds going in the same direction. This was an example of how to draw a hibiscus the easy way, and is totally adequate for our project. If you'd like to, on the other hand, follow along with the exact hibiscus that we're painting, feel free to download the link and use the sketch. The first thing we need to do is reserve the white bits. Apart from the ends of the petals, we'd like a tiny little sliver of white between the petals that will help to make them stand out from each other. I'll be using my 1/4" dagger striper to wet the petals. The dagger striper is ideal to work your way in and around pencil lines that we're trying to keep dry. So very simply wetting the petal, just not the pencil lines. In preparation for this exercise, I also used some masking fluid for the pencil lines, but it just wasn't the same and it can get a bit messy looking. The paint's only going to go where we put the water. I'm leaving this part of this petal white and this part white, so I'm only coming in here. And with this one, I want to leave the sliver there, so we're coming up here. Now, hopefully, I've kept the whites white. Now, on our palette here, I have a little bit of quinacridone coral, which is a lighter color than in the painting, but I really like this color. So too watery, it's a little bit milky. And now see the direction of these lines, how they go. They go in an anti-clockwise direction. Well, again, I want to put this color in like this. And leave the little white sliver there. And even paint the stamen in. Yeah, and under the stamen and on this one. And on this one, coming around here and around that one. This really allows you to get into those crevices. And the middle should be a little bit longer, but look, it really doesn't have to be. I'm washing my brush and drying it. And now I can go from the top of the petal and pull some lines in from the top and wipe it, and from the top like that. And I'll do that on all of them, but see the direction, all the curves are going the same way as the petals. You could even split these lines into little V's at the top. Washing my brush, wiping it dry and coming in. Wipe, wipe, wipe. And on this one here, when you look at it, it kind of comes out like that. And a few little streaks like that. I'm just going to soften that like that, and also soften this little bit in here. I've had this dagger striper for quite a long time, and you know, it's a little bit worn, but it still works beautifully. Now the next step is the background. So I'm adding a little bit of nickel azo yellow. So I'm going to put it right there and add it to our collection. Now we're going to use our 1/2" dagger brush, and you'll just see just how wonderfully practical it is. I'm going to wipe away some of this red so that it doesn't muddy up our greens. And I'll be using the nickel azo yellow, which is a beautiful color as a foundation for a sunny, leafy background. and for our negative painting. To test the colour, it's like that, which will be just great. So now with this dagger, we can come in and around. See how beautifully it's effortless when you can do it so easily coming in. But we need to wet. Let's wet around the edges, because we don't want marks. We want it to be soft around the edges. Okay, so now we can go back to our lovely nickel azo yellow with a little bit of sap green in it and come around the edges. And look how easy it is to go into these areas. It's beautiful. So I'm painting the whole background with this first. You can use the dagger brush to come into all these tight little spots, and then at the same time you can just turn it on its side and it's like a big flat brush. Okay, so we've done that, and now straight away we can have a look at our photo reference and see those dark abstract shapes in there. Just mop that up there. Okay, I'm going for some sap green. Again, I might have to blot up some water because we don't want it to be too runny. It's very important to mix a creamy consistency of this green paint so that we don't create cauliflowers or blooms because our layer is wet. And now look at the shapes. Look at this big abstract shape that starts in here. I've come in with my creamy paint onto the wet surface. I'm using the tip of my brush and the sword side of the brush, the diagonal side, because they all give me different lines and different shapes. And I'm very loosely painting in this dark big shape in the bottom left-hand corner of the photo. This second layer to the background is making it more interesting, giving it some light and shade, but it's the third layer where our negative painting will really shine. Now, over here on this side, there's a little bit of a darkish area. And you can see that some of the shapes are pointy. It's from the other leaves in the neighborhood, which is really great. And a little bit of dark up there. Might put some in there. Just here and there. And up here for this one. And you see, look at those shapes. I'm inspired by them, but I don't have to follow them completely. Just anything you do, as long as it's a little bit abstract. See the shape just behind petal number 2? It's a bit like a pointy triangle. And then that's all you do. Comes up like this. And then I can see another pointy triangle there. And I can see a funny looking shape in there. It's all abstract. This is called negative painting, and we're painting something which then reveals something else. So if I have a closer look, this little shape down here I can see is a leaf. I can pull a little vein in there and even suggest a little shape that might be considered a little bit leafy. So I could create a point on my brush add a few little veins like that. And I can see another leaf, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to see this dark spot here. Why don't we wash our brush and dry it, and then just pull a vein out and a few veins like this, and later on this will become a leaf. What we need to do every time is wash our brush, wipe it dry. If we're going to lift something, we could just pull a line like that. Only a couple of little veins will be enough. And now we can let this dry. This layer is now dry. So now we can proceed to make it a little bit more exciting. So I'm going to wet the petals again. I'll start with number 2 here, and I'll work my way around the white again and wet the whole petal, but just not the little white bits. And now I am going to get some of my quinacridone coral with a little bit of the permanent alizarin to make it darker. This is now creamier, and if you have a good look at the reference photo, it stems like this, gets a little bit higher in the middle there and a little bit lower again. And I'm trying to do minimal strokes here. So now I will wash my brush and wet the next one. And again, I'll wipe my brush so that I don't put too much water into this nice creamy mix. I want it to be very thickish. So I'm coming in again like this. I'll make the next one a bit higher. Like that. And again, I'll wash my brush and dry it. I'll put this paper towel here so that you can see me dry it. And now with this section down here, it's a little bit interesting. We want this little S to remain white. So maybe what I'll do first up is soften this little bit here, but now I will wipe it with a tissue, because like that, and I'll come in with the darker color from the center out. I've dipped my brush into a little bit of water, just a little bit, pick up some of this darker paint, and I'm carefully looking at the shape that I need to paint. So it's a little bit of an elongated rectangle like that. And the important thing is that we've got this little S shape down here, so I'm going to emphasize it like that. And then all this here is dark as well. And then out of this, I've washed my brush again and dried it, and I'm picking up some of the thick paint, and I'm going into this thick area, and I'm pulling out some lines like that. And I've washed my brush and dried it, and just softening this little bit in here, because later on we will be able to just put in some super dark lines, but for now just leave it like that. Okay, so when I'm looking at petal number 1, which is this top one, I can see that the darkest area is around this petal here. Let's get some of this darker color, still very, very creamy, and it's particularly dark around there. And then you can see the dark around the stamen and a little bit in there. I'm washing my brush and wetting some of this and pulling it up, and pull some lines in. And do what I did before. And going back to number 2, just coming in around the light bit of the petal and blending it out. And this can get softened, and this can be a little bit softened as well. Okay, so now let's put in those 5 little end bits of the centerpiece. I'm going to use this dark permanent alizarin, and they're situated here in a bit of a star shape, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we have here our nickel azo yellow, which is very yellow, round and into the red a little bit, and just with the tip of the striper we can add some really fine little lines to the tip. I've washed my brush and dried it, and under this petal here I'm going to just lift a little piece out that shows the bottom of this petal, exposes that leafy type of shape in there, and a few lines out like that. Now we are left with a little bit of a suggestion of some shadow around the whites of the ends of the petals. So to do that, we could go for a little bit of dark green, a little bit of the alizarin, a little bit of a soft grey, so it's got to be very diluted. You can get black, grey with just about any colour. So look, just use the colours that you've got, and that's way too dark. If I just keep adding water to this, see that? That's just getting nice and light, and it might be just right. After applying this very dilute mix to the ends of the petals, I found that it was way too light, but we'll fix it up later. The painting is dry now, and we're finally ready for the main part of our negative painting technique. Looking at the shapes on the photo, we can see all sorts of little leaves in the background, and what we need to do is negatively paint around some shapes for leaves to then reveal themselves. We'll mix up a very dark green made of the sap green and some jadeite and even a touch of ultramarine blue and work our magic. I'm now using a milky, slightly creamy mix of paint and painting on dry paper. I don't have to go right around, and you can already tell it's a leaf. I think that's when negative painting is even more beautiful, when you do it like that. And we can pull in some lines, look, like that. One of the biggest benefits of negative painting is that you're painting around something which already has a beautiful translucent layer and isn't overworked. So painting around it, you can't overwork it, which means your painting will be crisper and cleaner. And you'll notice when you're painting negatively with flowers, there's a lot of triangular shapes, I guess because the leaves are like that, but they create abstract shapes. See that line there kind of suggests this leaf here. We could put one there, and then we can blur this out. We can put in one there. We want these little things to stand out, but there's the center of the flower. Here are some leaves coming from the center somewhat. I could pull another line here and suggest another leaf, and then I can come around and there we have, it's another leaf, and that's not even joined up. We can have a bit of a dark shape in there as we do on the photo, but we're not overly concerned about it. The less you try to actually make leaves and just go with some abstract shapes, the more they will look like leaves. And the easiest way to apply these shapes is to point them towards your focal point, which is our flower. I'm just putting in some random shapes that I'm seeing in the photo, like a triangle here and a triangle there, and using some triangles to perhaps see the point of that, pointing a little bit towards the flower, and maybe a line like that for a leaf, maybe like that. And we can always put in a triangular something or other there. Even just by pressing on the tip, just pressing the brush down like a stamp will give you some lovely effects. A bit of darkness in there. And then something I like to do, which I'll wash this brush and I'll do it with the smaller one, is you get a little bit of this background color which is right there, and I'm going to pull it into between the petals and soften this a bit. This is the leading side of the petal. This is the back end of the petal, and it's more important for the front one to be in focus than the back one, and it often looks really nice when the back one is out of focus. Might add some little itty bitty ruffles to it. Okay, so today's a new day and I'm going to rub out all the pencil marks with my kneadable eraser. And there's one thing I'd like to do, because this area looks so red and this looks so green, I think I'd like to combine a little bit of it. And often that can be done with a little bit of adding one to the other. So with a clean brush, I'm going to brush the outsides of the petals, and then with a smaller brush, I'm going to brush some of the green from the outside in. And that just gives a really natural shadowing to the petals, even dipping a little bit into some really light green here. So that's one thing. And then by adding a little bit of clean water to some of the lighter areas, just a little bit, and now adding a tiny little bit of red to some of these areas, just randomly here and there, and just harmonizes a lot. Maybe even a vein. And the third thing that's going to happen is, with my clean brush, which has been wiped dry, I can just pull out a few lines like that and wipe them. I think it just breaks up some of the very dark red in there, and that will be that. And the very last thing I want to do is add a tiny little touch of some thickish red with the point of the dagger striper to the bottom of these little bits on the stamen. Just gives them a little bit of dimension. And a little bit of shadow in there. With a little bit of grey that I had mixed, I'm just going to make a few little shadows down here. I hope you enjoyed the hibiscus. I certainly did. And if you'd like to paint daffodils or frangipani, there are videos for that as well. And I'll see you next time. So happy painting.